When you go online and you type in relationships, relationship problems, or narcissistic abuse, or anything relating to relationship problems, whether it's related to marriage or friendships or business relationships, you'll often find the following topic: people looking for meaningful relationships. And there are articles pointing out that what they consider the Western world has suffered a loss of meaning. Now, I'm not going into the implications of this. I'm not going to debate it in this video. I just want you to ask the following: what do people mean with meaningful relationships? Meaningful means there's a meaning over there. There is an ascribed value to something. That's what meaning is, an ascribed value. Just think about the following. An ascribed value is ascribed to something. So that thing doesn't have that value in itself. It's ascribed to it. So someone ascribes it. So it's an agreement. But think about it. If a group of people ascribe a meaning to something, why are they ascribing that meaning? What are they getting out of it? Why would someone ascribe meaning to something and invest in that agreement if there's nothing for them in it? Look, this video is not a philosophical video to make you become a philosopher or anything like that. I just want you to look beyond. I say always in my videos that you have to look beyond. You have to look at the bigger picture. Now consider the following. Someone that does not follow Christ. Someone that does not agree with Christ. Someone whose only focus is the here and the now, with in their mind that their bodies have an expiration date. So the only thing they are looking for is to maximize the pleasures and the relief in this period in this body. And they want to prevent the expiration of the body, which is physical death, as much as possible. That's the only thing they have. Now, such an individual is not operating on a spiritual level, even though we are a spirit being. So as a spirit being, there's always this hole in that individual, a hunger that can't be satisfied. Why? They are a spirit being. So they ought to be spiritually active. But people that are not spiritually active, they will look for other things to fill that deficit inside of them. You have people that are paranormally active. And it seems as if they are operating in a fulfilling manner. It seems, but it's not. People that don't agree with Christ, that they don't walk supernaturally as they are intended, they have this deficit inside of them. Now, some manage this deficit far better than others. Some end up using drugs and becoming homeless and all of that. Others tend to become workaholics. They have a career that pays them high salary and they live an almost luxurious life. In both cases, by the way, I'm not saying that having a career or being paid high salary is something bad. But in both cases here, they are filling a deficit. But the deficit can't be filled with those things because they are spirit beings, so they have that part of them that needs to be spiritually active. But it's not spiritually active. So such an individual with a deficit, what will they do with the relationships in their life? They will ascribe meaning to those relationships that's related to the deficit they want to fill. That's how they relate to other people, based on the deficit they want to fill. So, if you have an individual who has nothing going for him, he only has death awaiting him. He doesn't follow Christ, he's not in agreement with Christ. He doesn't even realize he's a spirit being. His meaning in life is to maximize the relief, the periods of relief. So he thinks, I need to go to as much parties as possible, I need to bang as much chicks as possible, and later I need to settle with a good wife so that I can have a life of ease with less to no troubles before I become old and gray and I perish. That is his mindset. Or maybe he's not into partying, but he thinks, you know what? Let me invest in the community to get the validation of the community. Now, the one that invests in the community will be praised more than the one that goes to parties all the time and becoming drunk and all of that. But at the end of the day, both of them are filling a deficit. The one is seen as more productive than the other. The other is the one that goes to parties all the time, wasting his money. But in any case, if both don't have Christ, then both are filling a deficit. So the meaning they ascribe to what they're doing is based on the deficit. It's based on lack. It's based on relief seeking. That's the meaning they ascribe to their activities and their relationships. Now let's say now that the guy that often went to parties, all of that, he realized that, hold on a minute, I'm only spending money, I don't get ahead there, I encounter a lot of dangerous people over here, I don't want this. He may look up to the guy that's invested in the community, has a job that pays well and all of that, but he realizes that there's a lot coming with it. Eventually he realizes that he's been wrong his whole life, and the people around him, and they acknowledges Christ. He becomes born again. Now he knows he's a spirit being with a soul living in a body, and that after the expiration of the body, he'll be in Sheol until Christ returns and he'll be resurrected. So now he has another perspective. Now he knows that the termination of his body is not the end of his being. Now he knows that he'll be resurrected and he will live forever afterwards. There's only a pause between the termination of this body and the resurrection in the resurrection body. And just a space between the two, of which he will not be aware of how long it takes. So now he knows that there's life ahead of him. Of course, this body that he's in still has an expiration date. He knows that, and he lives in a world where people put a lot of emphasis on the expiration date of the body. But now his vision is different. Now the meaning he has concerning other people is completely different. The guy that's still investing in the community and has a high salary is still operating from relief seeking. So his wife, his kids, his relatives are all he has. He doesn't have anything else. Those are the source of joy for him. The one that came born again, his source of joy is Christ, where the real joy is. So his earthly relationships are only there to reflect the kingdom of God. So let's say this guy now has a wife, the one that's born again, and leaves him. Now, it may be painful, but because he's in agreement with Christ, you realize, hold on a minute, there are more women walking on the earth. I'm blessed, I'm anointed, I'm continuing. I'll continue here. So that guy quickly moves on, and before you know it, he has another wife. The other guy who's only invested in a community to get relief, when his marriage breaks and falls apart, he's devastated. Because that time he invested in that relationship, he ain't getting it back. He's not that young anymore. And he realizes at that age, of dating, it's going to be a bit difficult. So now he's in a depression. He's in a big setback. He doesn't have anything anymore. So he will try to salvage the relationship at all costs, even if the relationship is toxic and destructive onto him. Because the meaning he ascribes to that relationship is based on a deficit. The one that agrees with Christ, he realized that he has provisions on his account in the heavens that he has free access to. So that guy will invest in his human relationships, but not with the intent to get relief from them, not with the intent to be better from them. That doesn't mean he will get involved in toxic relationships, but that means that he does not depend on the validation and support of other people. If he gets support from other people, that's fine. He appreciates it, he values it, but he doesn't depend on it. So understand here that those that agree with Christ versus those that don't agree with Christ, their worldview is completely different. Their basis is different. Remember this, believer, when you are interacting with those that don't know Christ. The way they view you is very different than how you view them. Look, worldly people are narcissistic. I'm not saying they're narcissists, all of them, but they're narcissistic and centered or self-centered. Now, of course, through culture and norms and values, they condition one another to consider each other. and that's a good thing. But because they don't have Christ, they often fall back on themselves, on what they expect and what they want. And if there is no restraint, they'll turn into reprobates. That's how it is with worldly people. Their focus is self, while your focus is Christ. You look at the bigger picture. So understand that there are worldly people that will not continue to walk with you because they can't move where you're going. You know, in the world they tell you time is your most valuable asset because you never get it back. Money you can earn again, but time you can't. It's true that you can't redo time. But the reason world people say that time is the most valuable asset is because they have nothing else. They know their bodies will expire, and their whole aim is to maximize the duration of their body and to fill it with as much relief as possible. That's, in short, what the mindset of the world comes down to. So, when you go to trials and tribulations, there are worldly people that will dump you because they think, I can't spend time on this, I won't get it back. Well, you know, this affliction is brief, and I will overcome and come out far better after it. But because worldly people have no hope, they have nothing to expect except that they will forfeit you, many of them. So understand that having long-term relationships with worldly people, with those that don't agree with Christ, it's a challenge. Even worldly people amongst each other having long-term relationships with one another is a challenge. Look at how many problems people in the world have. Look at how much violence there is in the world. Look at how much domestic violence is going on. So even when they have the same basis or a similar basis as worldly people, they still have a lot of difficulties. They just don't talk about it. So understand as well, if they, of the world together, having the same basis, which is relief seeking, and they have so much violence amongst one another, what do you think you will have? You that agree with Christ. You operate in the light, they are in darkness. You think there will not be any conflict over here? Yes, there will be. Yes, you will have worldly people that you will interact with. Okay? You can't just only interact with believers only. And there are even believers who are worldly because they're not in agreement with Christ. Okay? Just understand that you can't expect your relationships with worldly people to be free of conflict, to be free of tensions, free of difficulties. Stop expecting that. A lot of folks are expecting conflict-free relationships. They want difficulty-free relationships. That's what people in the world are looking for. And it's only let me say it like this, it's only a minority of worldly people that finally admit that that's not possible. Look, they don't have Christ, who's the Prince of Peace. So how can they have peaceful, long-term relationships if the Prince of Peace ain't there? If they don't acknowledge him, if they don't agree with him. Look, for those that agree with Christ, realize your relationships with those that don't agree with Christ will always involve some kind of difficulty. Some of those relationships will become toxic and you need to remove yourself from them. Others, you can remain in them for a while. Just realize on the long term, you will always encounter difficulties with worldly people when you agree with Christ. Why? Because they're worldly. Worldly people amongst each other, even if they are from the same background, have difficulties with each other on the long term. What you see in society, in public sphere, is performance. Society expects you to perform, to keep things going. And that's what a lot of people do. But behind the scenes, there's a lot of violence, disagreements, a lot of tensions, a lot of conflict. But they call that the private sphere, which is what's really going on. So don't be fooled by the images world people project onto you, whether it's on social media or just out there. Many are just lying, convincing themselves they're having a great life while it isn't. Look, you have a different basis than those that don't agree with Christ. Always remember this in your relationships with them. That's why it's not wise to be unequally yoked with unbelievers. Unequally yoked simply means to become too deeply involved with them on the long term. If you're at a job, you're a computer technician, and there are other computer technicians there. They're unbelievers. Some may be part of other religions. Some are atheists. Well, atheism is also a religion. You can be deeply involved with them when it comes to solving issues in computer networks. That's a superficial task. If you have a bond with them, then it relates to work. That's what you can do. But please, don't move beyond that with them. Why not? Because they have a different basis. Okay, not only will they likely don't agree with you on many points, but as I mentioned before, their viewpoint of life is completely different than yours. Some may have a more relaxed viewpoint, and they may seem similar to those that follow Christ because they have compassion and all, but nevertheless, they don't have the Prince of Peace in them. Do not be unequally yoked with unbelievers. It will only cause you a lot of misery and unnecessary trouble. And you'll go through trouble enough during this lifetime, especially when you follow Christ, with all the resistance and persecution and all of that. You don't need extra baggage with you. Well, that's it for now. Agree with Christ and be at peace.